everybody, Gary here with Guitar Tricks, and in this lesson we're going to go over the basics of funk rhythm guitar. So I'm going to share with you some tips on the strumming technique, give you a couple classic funk chords, some exercises that you could use to develop this technique, and then I'm going to share with you some common funk strum patterns. Before we get into the lesson, please go ahead and click subscribe so that you get all the latest and greatest content from Guitar Tricks. Alright, make sure you got your guitar and let's get into it. So the first thing to keep in mind with funk rhythm guitar is to realize you're playing the role of a percussionist. You're more like a drummer than anything else. So you want a sound that's really going to cut through the mix, that is nice and clean, nice and focused. So a lot of funk guitar, it's super duper clean. There's hardly any reverb. There's definitely no distortion or anything. You just got this just very, I might actually have a little bit too much reverb. As far as pickups, middle position's real nice. Bridge position could be good. Neck could be a little too warm, a little too thick. For the most part, funk players use single coil pickups because they're brighter, they're more focused, and it just has more of a percussive sound. So being I have a humbucker and a single coil, I'm going to stick in the middle position. I'm going to get the brightness of this humbucker in the bridge position, but I'm going to get the more focused, transparent sound of the single coil, so the middle is going to work out. I'm going to put my tone knob full on, so all the way open, because I want that full brightness to come out. Volume, sometimes I like to roll it back a little bit, because that just also thins out the sound. A lot of times when you have your volume full on, it's thicker, but if you just roll it off a bit, it just thins it out a little bit. So that's what I'm going for. So the first chord we're going to use to talk about the technique is a B minor 7, actually. In funk, 7 chords and 9 chords are really popular. So you might know this B minor right here. But instead we're going to do a B minor 7, which looks like this. Some people play it like this. I like to play it like this. And the technique here is we take our 3rd finger and we bar it down on the 7th fret, first 4 strings like this. Then we take our 3rd finger and we play the root note, the B, on the 7th fret. So everything's on the 7th fret. So we're going to play that B on the low E 7th fret. And we're going to skip over the A string, but the A string is going to get muted in this whole mess over here. It's going to just kind of get pinched between the tip of my 3rd finger and the flesh of my 2nd finger. So when I strum through, that gets muted. Now, even though I'm playing the whole thing, for the most part, I'm just going to aim for the top 3 or 4 strings. But sometimes I'll hit that low one. But I'm not just, I'm not trying to get everything. I'm trying to get a nice, controlled, brighter sound just on those top 3 or 4 strings. So now the next part of the technique of funk is keeping a constant 16th note groove. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're gonna go 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Now in order to get that sound to work, we don't want to do the arm strum. We want to do more of the wrist strum. So I'm keeping a very relaxed, loose wrist, like I'm shaking off water on my hand. I'm just trying to get that water off my hand, and then on the way back up, same thing. So I'm shaking it onto the ground and shaking it up towards my face. I'm just keeping that shake like my wrist is asleep. And then I'm just holding that pick lightly in my hands. I've got kind of the chicken head technique where it's coming straight out of the thumb this way. And then my pointer comes, so then my thumb comes to this edge and my pointer comes to this edge, and I keep it very relaxed. I'm holding on so lightly that anyone can just come and pull that pick out of my hand. If I'm holding on too tight, it's just going to be too rough of a sound. We want more of that as opposed to. So the lighter we hold it, the less tension, the looser, the more funky it's going to sound. The other thing I would recommend is using a classic teardrop sized medium pick for funk rhythm guitar. That's going to give you a more percussive sound, and it's going to be thin enough to be a little flexible on the strings, whereas the heavy ones could be a little too rough sounding for funk rhythm guitar. And then the really thin ones, I find it's really hard to like control dynamics. It just always kind of sounds kind of thin and quiet with the thin pick. So medium is the best for me. All right, now with that in mind, we're going to try to go back and forth between playing the chord like this, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and chucking the chord. And by that I just mean muting it like this. So to get that sound, we just want to lightly touch our fingers on the strings. We're not pulling them off, we're just lightly touching. Now at first you might lightly touch some of them, but maybe you're on an angle and you're hitting the low E or the high E. So you want to just keep everything flat and just parallel to the strings so that you could strum all the strings and it's just going to be this muting sound. So let's try this. Let's go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Nice. Now, I just kind of started at a random tempo. What I would recommend is that you get a metronome app, and for funk, you could even get one that's more like a drum machine. I've got one called Super Metronome here, and it actually plays just a basic drum beat. Now, you want to find a tempo that's slow enough that you could do these 16th notes. So if this is 60 BPM, 1, 2, 3, 4 would be 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So you might have to start at 50 BPM, 45 BPM, somewhere real slow just to get the hang of it. But once you have that technique down, then you can speed it up. And I'm going to give you some exercises that you could use to practice. So we did 2 beats of playing, 2 beats of muting. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Awesome. So I'm going to give you a few more exercises. Let's try playing on beats 1 and 3 and muting on beats 2 and 4 like this. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. All right, I'll count you in. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So when you practice these, you're looking for a really neat and clean sound. When I'm muting, all you hear is muting. When I'm letting the notes ring out, you're hearing them all ring out. So you're trying to avoid things like this. You know, a kind of messy, mushy thing. You want it very distinct. Playing, muting, playing, muting. Don't worry yet too much about, oh, am I targeting the first 3 strings, the 4, all of them? Right now you just want to make sure that you're getting everything muted and that the chord is ringing out when you're trying to ring it out. Let's try now only letting ring out the first 16th note. So in other words, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So you squeeze and then let go real quick. Squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go, squeeze. I'll count you in. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Awesome. So these are the kinds of exercises you're going to want to do on your own. So now let's do 1 E. We're going to let the notes ring out, and the and we're going to mute like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E. All right, here we go. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and do it with me. And awesome. And if it was fast, now let's try 1 E and mute, 2 E and mute, 3 E and mute, 4 E and mute. It'll sound like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. All right, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and here we go. And awesome. And if it was fast, that was kind of easy because we started with the 1. Now to get more funky, let's do the and. So we're going to mute on 1 E, play and mute on 2 E, play and mute 3 E, play and mute 4 E, play and. That'll sound like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and. All right, I'll count you off. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. And that was fast. Let's try only playing the So mute, 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 play, mute, 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 play, mute, 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 play, mute, 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 play. Like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. I'll count you off. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So those are really straightforward, but in funk, a lot of times there's a polyrhythm going on. And polyrhythm means you have kind of 2 competing rhythms going on at the same time, or 2 competing tempos. So a lot of times what happens in funk is a 3/4 feel. So let's say here we had 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this hand's doing 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I recommend you be able to do this. If you can do this in your body, it's going to help you feel this thing which is really popular in funk, blues, lots of pop. Okay, so with that in mind, here's a really popular rhythm in funk. So we have 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Cool, right? You'll hear funk players also not always stay to the exact pattern. You can embellish it. Like that last one, I might go. Once you get really comfortable with the technique, you can start embellishing and kind of changing little things, and this way it keeps it exciting and keeps it interesting. Now with that 16th note constant pattern, sometimes you don't want to hit it on every beat. You always want to keep this motion going, but sometimes you want to skip one of the ups or downs. So here's a really popular funk strum pattern where you're not going to keep the constant 16th note. It goes like this. So with this pattern, we're gonna go down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 mute. So now with that pattern, let's really bring this to life by adding a second chord. Now these two chords work really great together, and it's a really popular sequence in funk. We've got this B minor 7, and then we're going to go to an E9 chord. Now the fingering is almost exactly the same. We bring this second finger down one string, and we bring the third finger down one string, and we still do that same pattern, but now we add in the in-between string, which in this case is the D string, 1 fret lower. So we've got second finger on the 7th fret of the A, first finger on the 6th fret of the D, and then third finger barring the 7th fret of strings 1, 2, and 3. Now it could be hard to get this voicing down. I usually kind of shift my hand out this way to help get the whole thing. Now if you don't get the whole thing and this finger gets muted out, it's still going to sound cool. So see, listen, if I mute that string by accident, it still sounds cool. So don't worry too much if you're not able to get all of those strings, especially this one. So now we're just going to do that down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 down, up, mute, 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 mute. And then you could add little accents, like I'm just hearing that. I just think that's really cool. Now that's another popular thing, is to add this note with your pinky if you can get it. So then as far as the practice technique, just start with your metronome at a really slow tempo and gradually increase. You know, I got on my super metronome here, maybe 60 is your start, where you got 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, then maybe within 30 minutes you're working at 67. And then maybe by the end of the week you're working at 73. And then maybe by next month you're working at 83. And then maybe by next year, you're working at 103. All right, everybody, I hope you had fun during that lesson and you feel like now you've got the basics of funk rhythm guitar down. If you want to learn more on this topic, head over to guitartricks.com. If you want to see more lessons like this, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care.